Have final action on all of those, actually, if we get to them eventually here. So, but what we're going to start off with is Senate Bill 142. We want to go to final action on that, and that's the flotation device. And we had an amendment. It was amended. And Tamara, do you want to just see here, just to run, pass it for the committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
There she is. Welcome to the committee there, Tamara.
Thank you. If you'll recall, yesterday when the committee was discussing Senate Bill 142, there was also some discussion of what the federal regulations require and the exception in federal regulations when a child is below decks or in an enclosed cabin. The committee did adopt an amendment to mirror the federal language. And so what that would say is no operator of any vessel may operate such vessel while any person 12 years of age or under is aboard or being towed by such vessel unless such person is either wearing a United States Coast Guard approved personal flotation device as prescribed in rules and regulations of the Secretary of Wildlife, Parks and Tourism, or is below decks or in an enclosed cabin. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Tamara. Any questions for Tamara? The motion was to adopt that language, and this is what the language states. Any other questions? Seeing none, I need a motion to pass out Senator Alley. We have a motion. You got it all. As amended, right? We have a motion to pass out Senate Bill 142 as amended, favorably for passage. We have a second from Senator Straub. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Bill is passed out. Move our attention on our agenda to Senate Bill 160. We'll skip over 143 for now. We'll do that last. Senate Bill 160, the Guidelines on American Fisheries Society and the Commercialization of Wildlife. Tamara, you want to just give us a quick rundown on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 160 would update the reference to the guidelines of the American Fisheries Society from special publication number 30 to publication number 35. And I'll be happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions on the fisheries bill? Seeing none, I need a motion to pass out favorably. Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move we pass out Senate Bill number 160 favorably.
Is there a second? Senator Ware. Second by Senator Ware. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Oh, hang on a sec. Senator Peck, sorry I missed you there.
That's fine. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm easily missed in some circles. Does the House have legislation exactly like this or very similar? Or do you know?
I don't know if they do.
I ask for one reason, and that's thinking as a chairman, if it's exactly the same, one of us should maybe offer some type of an amendment so it goes to conference. But if you don't know, I'll just stand down.
I think there's plenty of amendments around.
Plenty of vehicles around? Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Realizing that this is a fairly uncontroversial bill, I'm wondering if I might amend my motion to say that it's put on the consent calendar. I don't know if the second would be in favor of that or what the committee believes.
Who seconded that? Senator Ware, yeah. It's okay with the second? Committee, is that all right to put it on the consent calendar request? Sounds like good. So the motion is changed to pass the bill out favorably and put it on the consent calendar. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. The bill is passed out and will be on the consent calendar. Next committee, we'll move down to Senate Bill 261. And this is the Asbestos Bill. We just got this a week ago. And so the House has already worked it and sent it over to us because we're on the environmental division of KDH&E. And so we'll work on Senate Bill 261. Okay, the bill is actually inside your folder, Judy said. So just to make sure if you want to see that, that's Senate Bill 261. So we'll open the hearing on Senate Bill 261. And Tamara, we'll start with you to give a rundown on the asbestos. Right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So prior to last year, money from the asbestos program was deposited in the state general fund. Last year in the budget bill, Senate Bill 66, a proviso was included that established the asbestos remediation fund and directed money collected related to asbestos remediation to that fund. Senate Bill 261 would establish the asbestos remediation fund in statute. The Secretary of Health and Environment would administer the fund. The Secretary would be required to remit to the state treasury all monies collected or received from permit and approval fees collected under the Asbestos Control Program, any monies recovered from the state under the program, including administrative expenses, civil penalties, and monies paid under any agreement, stipulation, or settlement, and interest attributable to the investment of monies in the fund. All such monies would be deposited by the state treasurer in the state treasury to the credit of the Asbestos Remediation Fund. Monies in that fund could only be expended for the purposes of administering the Kansas Asbestos Control Act, including funding of a technical and environmental compliance assistance program, and for no other governmental purpose. The bill would also amend to other statutes to direct the state treasurer to credit the fees and civil penalties received under the Asbestos Control Program to the Asbestos Remediation Fund instead of the state general fund. Senate Bill 261 would take effect upon publication in the statute book, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Tamara. Committee, any questions for the revisor? Seeing none, thank you very much. We'll begin with the proponents. And the first one will be Leo Henning, is I guess your virtual, remote. Mr. Henning, you hear us?
Yes, do you hear me?
Yep, we got you now. There you go.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chairman Kirshen and committee members for allowing me some time today to provide testimony in support of Senate Bill 261. I am Leo Henning, Deputy Secretary and Director of Environment at the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. You should have my written testimony there. So I'm just going to provide a few comments on this bill, and it will be brief. Senate Bill 261 pertains to the Asbestos Control Act that was passed in 1985. The purpose of the act is to license companies that perform asbestos abatement in the state and ensure the proper handling and disposal of the asbestos material. So a little history regarding Senate Bill 261. As was discussed, a proviso was added to the budget last year in Senate Bill 66. And I've provided that proviso language in my written testimony if you'd like to look at that. The proviso did two things. It created an asbestos remediation fund, and it directed fees collected by the asbestos program to the asbestos remediation fund instead of state general funds. KDHE was instructed last year by the legislature to bring a bill this year that makes those conditions of the proviso permanent. So Senate Bill 261 does that. It statutorily creates the Asbestos Remediation Fund, and it directs the fees collected by the program to the Asbestos Remediation Fund. So the bill allows the collective fees to stay with and support the asbestos program. The asbestos remediation industry also supports this bill because they want the fees to stay with the program that is actually performing support for their functions. Just a little bit more is yesterday the House heard House Bill 2208 and passed it out of committee favorably. That is a mirror of this bill on the House side. So thank you. I hope you pass this bill out favorably, and I will stand for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Henning. Any questions for the director? Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm interested in how balanced the fees that you collect and the expenses that you have are at this point. So I saw that before the proviso, it talks about annual funding, but are you collecting approximately $110,000 in fees?
So I would answer that in a normal year. That's about what we average. This year, because of COVID, those fees are way off. Asbestos work in the state has slowed, as many industries have. So we are off a little bit on our fee collection. But just a general, if you allow me to use round numbers, it takes about $110,000 a year to run the program. The state general fund provided about 80,000. So we put 110 in, we got 80,000 back out. So we were short on the program. So we would have to use money from the air quality fee fund to make the program whole, about 30,000 a year. With this, we will no longer have to take money out of the air quality fee fund to run the asbestos program.
Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think my real question then is, if you are collecting enough in fees, why would we also want the penalty money to go to this fund rather than go to the state general fund? Because it couldn't be used for anything else but this asbestos remediation fund work. So is there any response to that?
Historically, we have at least the air program. Anytime there's a penalty, it goes back to the program. I will just say that for this program, I don't think there's been a penalty issued in over 5 years. And when it is really an insignificant amount of money.
Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The question I have is on the air quality fee fund. You're using that to supplement the shortfall in the asbestos program. Is that correct?
Currently, before the proviso, that is historically how we've done it. With the proviso, we should be able to meet our program needs, except that this year we probably won't because of the downturn in the economy.
So if we do no longer need the air quality fee fund, could those fees be reduced?
The air quality fee fund runs the entire clean air program in the state. It's a $5-6 million fund. So the $30,000, and that is exactly why this proviso was put in, is because the legislature did not want us to continue to use air quality fee funds to support this program. So that's why the proviso was put in.
Any other questions for Mr. Henning? No other questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Henning, for your testimony.
Senator, I don't know, because this was on such a short notice, if you received all of the written testimony from industry reps, but industry has come out in favor of this bill clearly, and I hope you did receive those.
We did. We
Okay.
got them. Everybody's got it in their packet. So the whole
All right,
list,
okay.
the whole list.
All right.
Okay. Thank you very much, committee. Anybody else who would like to testify as a proponent for 261? Randy, welcome to the committee.
Mr. Chairman, good morning. Randy Stuckey. We did submit written testimony on behalf of our three associations, the Kansas Grain and Feed Association, the Renew Kansas Biofuels Association, and the Kansas Agribusiness Retailers Association, all of whom, in one form or another, pay into the Air Quality Fee Fund, which is kind of a tangential issue to the immediate bill. But as Senator Alley had mentioned, a portion of that fee fund is used currently and has been to cover the need for the asbestos program. We're not in favor of that. On principle, we think that the fees that are collected for a program need to go to that program. And so we would stand in support of this bill to ensure that those fees that are collected for the air quality fee fund are not redirected then to the asbestos program. So that's our issue with this bill, or our interest in the bill, and would stand for any questions at the appropriate time.
Okay, any questions for Randy, committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. Anyone else would like to testify as a proponent? Anyone else? I will direct your attention to your packet that we have a list of written proponent only, and the list is down there. It's called W. Allen Sill, Ray Furman from Bradburn Environmental Service, Randy Stuckey and Grain and Feed, Paul B. Van B. and R. Insulation, Paul Ryan, ACM Removal, Gary Mason, ICP Industrial Services, and Greg Ligletter, Associated Insulation. Those are all proponent written testimony we've received. Anybody else want to testify as a neutral? Is there anyone who wants to testify as an opponent? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 261. Only have one more day left, barely 1 day left. I would like to consider going to final action on this bill and moving it so we can pass it out and take it from there. So we would like to make a motion to pass it out. Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to pass out favorably Senate Bill 261 and place it on the consent agenda.
Is there a second? You want? Okay, we have a second from Senator Straub. I was a little surprised this is a little lengthier bill on the consent calendar. It may be an easy fix, but whatever the committee wants to do.
If you want to get them to talk about it, you can.
Okay.
I'll take that part off. I just thought that would save you some time.
It would, but we want a good bill, make sure everybody's on.
So you want me to?
Let's just vote on the consent calendar and then see what the committee wants to do. All in favor of putting the bill on the consent calendar? Oh, Senator French, you have a question first?
Well, I had wanted to discuss the bill after the
Okay.
motion, and this, so my concern really is with penalties and fines going to a department rather than to the state general fund. And I know that it varies in our statutes, but generally, to me, it makes the most sense to collect fees that cover the program, and then fines there should not be a reward to a department for assessing fines. So that's my concern with this. And that's why I asked whether the fees would cover the program. And I think we want fees to cover the expenses of administering the program, but not necessarily use fines to do that.
Any other discussion? Senator Straub.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if the fees go into the, whatever the fund is called, they can only be used for asbestos remediation, correct? Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments? Senator Francisco.
So the other concern would be if we do find a individual who should be fined and is not paying attention to it. I'm trying to remember if the fines are per day. And I don't know that, so it's in an amount not to exceed $5,000 for each violation, and every such day is a violation. I don't think there's any reason to have a lot of funds or a lot of money in this fee fund. Alternatively, I would assume the fees could be reduced if there are fines, because I'm glad that it's only limited to the asbestos remediation fund.
All right, Senator Dahl, you have a question?
My understanding, there's not additional money. They're taking money from another fund to make this one equal. So what they're trying to do is, so they don't have to take money from another fund So I don't think anybody's profiting from this thing. So I don't understand where the senator's coming from.
Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the problem was all the fees prior to this situation, the fees were deposited in the state general fund, and they were collecting $110,000 in fees, and the department was only being given $86,000 to run the program out of the state general fund. So the difference was not in the fees, it was in money that went to the state general fund and was not given back to run the program. And so the department was told, take it from other fees that you collect, and that's what was inappropriate. That's my understanding, and I'm happy to be corrected if that's not the case.
Thank you for the comments. Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In testimony, said he hadn't collected any for like 5 years. So, that kind of caught my ear. So I don't think that's going to be a lot of money in there, just my opinion. Thank you.
Committee, we have a motion on the floor to pass it out and put it on the consent calendar. Let's do that first. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. No. Motion fails. Does somebody want to make a motion to pass it out without the consent calendar? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move favorably.
Second? Second by Senator Straub. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. Okay. The bill passes out favorably, and Senator Francisco wants to re-record as no. Committee, that takes care of Senate Bill 261, and thank you for your indulgence on that. Let's move back now to Senate Bill 143, the grain warehousing bill, which we was having a hearing on, and we closed the hearing. We'll open the hearing back up to talk about some amendments that we on this particular bill. So we are on the bill now. So is there any other discussion for an amendment? Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I appreciated the discussion, and I certainly support the changes that are being made in the storage fee. Also appreciate the department and the grain operators and their representatives coming to what I think is a good agreement. The one question that I asked, I understand that in another part of our statutes, it's clear that the license expires after a year, but my concern was that there's nothing in this section that says that you need to renew that license. So I have an amendment that I think would address that issue, and I'll pass that out.
Does everyone have a copy? Senator Peck, you get one? Okay. Okay, you want to explain the amendment, Senator Francisco?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This just makes a change on page 3, line 11, to say that any person desiring to engage in a business as a public warehouseman in the state shall, before the transaction of any such business and annually thereafter, make written application to the secretary for a license for each separate warehouse. So that would make it clear that this is an annual license that's being requested. I did talk with representatives of the department, and Mr. Chair, I believe they have notified you that they agree and support this amendment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Senator. Any questions on the amendment? Any discussion or questions on the amendment? I can make a motion to move the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move this amendment.
Is there a second? By Senator Ware. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Amendment is adopted. Any other discussion on Senate Bill 143 amendments? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I look at the fee structure on page 5, we were told by the Kansas Feed and Grain that without the license fee, these fee increases would be an average of 84%. And the reason I say an average, you can see the first one from 500 to 740, that is not 84%. But when you go down to the very bottom one, over 20 million bushels, it more than doubles from, or not quite doubles, I guess, 350 to 650. And there are several significant fee increases. So I didn't think until just now, so I'm not going to offer a conceptual amendment, but I think an 84% increase is way out of line. So I'm not going to be supporting passage of Senate Bill 143. If the fees were increased at a lower percentage, I'd sure be willing to look at it, but I'm not going to at 84%. And the Kansas Department of Agriculture said it's an average of 38.5% increase. That's the license fee and the storage fees. So it's interesting to me that we get 38.5% from one, 84% from another. And neither one of these, if I recall correctly, were opponents to the legislation. But because the fee increase or the storage fee increase is 84% increase, as we were told on the average, that's just way too much for me to swallow. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, we didn't have any opponents on that, on the testimony either. So would the department like to respond to that? Comment or two, or? State your name and introduce yourself. Welcome to the committee.
Good morning. My name is Jeff Vogel, Program Manager, Grain Warehouse Program with the Department of Agriculture. And the bushel fee is only a portion of the license fee that is collected when an applicant applies. Currently, that bushel fee is less than half the fees we collect on total. The other part of that is the functional unit fee. A functional unit is, you could think of a location or a town where a grain warehouse is at, or an elevator. And for every one of those, except the original one, there's a $500 functional unit fee. And so if we're looking at to have a revenue increase of $117,000 was our target, which is 38.5% on total, and we're only adjusting the bushel fee. Since that already currently is below half of the revenue we collect for a licensing, it has to increase substantially, and that is where we were talking about the 80%, plus or minus some, depending on the categorization of that. So hopefully that provides a little bit of clarity, and I'd certainly be able to help answer any questions if there are any further ones. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeff. Is there any other questions for Senator Alley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm trying to find it, and I haven't found it in documents yet, but did we say yesterday that the inspectors would be reduced from 6 to 5?
So to answer your question, we believe we need 6 examiners in the field to be able to conduct an examination at each of these facilities every year or every 12 months. Furthermore, they have other additional responsibilities. We call them original measurements, but when a facility adds or removes storage, we have to inspect and measure that ahead of time. So there are some other special things that happen. We believe we need 6 to conduct all those activities in that reasonable amount of time on an annual basis. Currently, Because of the funding issues we have, we are at 5 examiners. And so our hope is with this fee adjustment with additional revenue, we are able to commit back to 6 examiners in the field.
If I may, so maybe my math is wrong, but if we go from yearly inspections to 18-month inspections, and if we were to, let's just use the number of $1 for each inspection, and you were going to do it annually, over a 3-year period, it would charge $3 for those 3 inspections. Is that math, I hope, is right there? But if we went to 18-month inspections, over those same 3 years, you'd only have $2. And then if we would go from 18 or 12 months and you need 6 inspectors, we went down to every 18 months. It seems like you would need less inspectors to cover the same amount of property. And then I would say that the total dollars for each inspector would be include their truck, their vehicle, their office space, their equipment, all that. So it looks like to me that we can't, if we went to the 18-month and we committed to the 18-month, we should be able to reduce that down from what we did. Is that correct?
I understand what you're saying. I go back, I guess what we've shared before is that even though in this bill, it changes the interval, the maximum interval from 12 months to 18 months, there is some allowance for the secretary or for the department to make that at a sooner interval. And our intent, our goal has been through this process of this proposal is that we would maintain this 12-month interval of inspections to maintain the balance of inspections and examinations and providing that information to the grain warehouse to ensure that they, what their measured inventory matches their position or the position reports they have. And so this would give us some flexibility, especially what we've learned this last year with COVID-19 and us having to shut down our examinations during that period in the spring because of the pandemic, and that we would have some flexibility in some unexpected events in the future. But our goal would be to maintain a 12-month interval, which would require that 6 examiners in the field.
And if I may, one more question. So if we continue to do it that way, will this $60,000 that we're putting in there be an every year occurrence from the SGF?
May I ask some clarification on the question? You mean
Money that we're putting in from the SGF.
Uh-huh.
Will that be an every year request? Is it going to continue from now on then?
So if the $60,000 makes it through the budgeting process and is appropriated to the program, I guess when we get through that, we would offset any fee increase by that amount. But if there was a decision later by the legislature or to reduce that amount, then we would, if with the current bill, we would have the flexibility of going to the stakeholders and discussing a regulatory change to adjust the fees accordingly to counter the reduction in state general funds so that we could maintain our current services that we provide to the industry.
Any other questions for Jeff? Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just that these fees are not more than, and they are not necessarily the increases in fees you are proposing for this next year.
That is correct, Senator. These are the maximums, and we would set the exact fee in a regulation and adjust that there, and we would go through the regulatory adoption process to set those. And so we would be able to adjust as necessary depending on the outcome of the budgeting process.
Okay, any other questions for Jeff? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other proponents that want to testify on the Senate bill? Any other proponents? We will, there are several written testimonies. Is there anybody that is a neutral? Does anybody want to testify as neutral? Seeing none, is there anybody want to testify as an opponent? Seeing none, we close the hearing on Senate Bill, on this Senate Bill 143. In final action, I'm in. Yes, Senator Francisco.
I did have one more concern that I just wanted to share with the committee. This is one I had after I had asked Tamara to work with me yesterday on the amendment. But this is on page 4, where we're talking about what net worth we're requiring of an individual to be licensed to have this public warehouse storage. So there's two things that are happening here. One, every applicant has to maintain a net worth for the payment of indebtedness that's based on the bushels. But then we also say no person shall be granted a license or shall continue to be licensed unless the person has a net worth of at least $25,000. So I think that this is probably a figure that was established some time ago. And that is not very useful at this point. We are certainly trying to make sure that if something happens to the grain, that there is some equity available to those farmers. So I would suggest we consider changing the figure on both lines 16 and 17 on page 4 from 25,000 to 50,000. So we're asking people who have this warehouse to have a minimum net worth of 50,000, and then if they have less than that, they can get a bond or a letter of credit.
Committee, anybody else want to make a comment at this point? We closed the hearing we're going to close the hearing on Senate Bill 143, and we're going to proceed to final action. And if we have an amendment, we could possibly put it on at that time. So, pardon me? She didn't make an amendment. Do you have a motion that? Okay.
Well, I had a previous amendment that we've already put on this bill, but I think this is worth considering because, again, what we're trying to do, the fees are making sure that the department can make this program work. They've been agreed to, but the real individuals at risk are the farmers who are bringing their grain. And I just think that $25,000 asking for that in net worth is not giving much security. So my motion would be to change the two figures on line 16 and line 17 on page 4 from a net worth of at least $25,000 to a net worth of $50,000.
Okay, is there a second? We have a second. Any discussion on the motion? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hear what you're saying, Senator. The difference between 25,000 and 50,000 from the banking world is nothing, because I can tell you that they could show you $250,000. And when you really sit down and wash it out and how you're going to get money out of that, and I don't think that part of it, and I would think that that would be a discussion for another day, my opinion. I don't think that's going to protect us like I think. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Senator Francisco.
Thank you. And I agree with the senator that this is probably not enough to provide a lot of protection. I think that there's some good requirements about determining net worth. But I think if we make this change on the Senate side, then when the House looks at this, there's an opportunity for the department to address that and for other people to address it. I think 50,000 is just noting that this is probably not a reasonable number, but our committee has not heard any testimony. So I was suggesting a number that I have no qualms about an increase, and then would hope that the House would look at that particular number because there's been a change and it's something up for discussion in the bill. Does that help?
We will conference on that if we, with the House.
Well, we would conference with the House, but if we haven't, if it's the same in both bills and they don't change it, it wouldn't be up for conference. So I was just saying, if we change it now and we send it over to the House can look at that number, and that would be part of the testimony that they would get. Is that a reasonable number or not?
Any other discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment, say aye. Opposed, no.
No.
Amendment fails. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, committee, I would entertain a motion to pass the bill out favorably. And like I say, we will be conferencing. We already have a amendment, your other amendment, the conference on. Senator Dahl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we pass the bill out favorably.
As amended.
As amended.
The second is by Senator Francisco. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the bill, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Bill is passed. Committee, that's all the work we have for today, and we will not be meeting tomorrow since we concluded this work. And I want to thank the committee for their work on the first time we had the subcommittee worked on the budget, and our committee was a full subcommittee report. So we did that yesterday, and it was approved by Ways and Means. So thank you for your input and all the step direction you gave us on that subcommittee report. So we appreciate that very much. We are adjourned.